Hi, everybody. My name is Amanda Whitehead, and this is my training presentation on prompting. To start off, let's talk about what a prompt is. A prompt is any type of help given to a learner when they are learning a new skill or a new behavior. The skill that we're going to be talking about during this presentation will be a student Sally writing her name. So when we use prompting, we are decreasing any incorrect responses. So what that means is for Sally writing her name, we want to teach her how to do it correctly where she doesn't make any errors. And when we use prompts, we do it in a systematic way. So we'll talk about the prompt hierarchy later in this presentation. Just as well as we use prompts, we actually remove them as well. So we want to fade them back so our learners can become more independent on a certain skill. Prompts vary depending on the skill, which we'll touch on later in this presentation. Prompts are very important during interventions. What's nice about prompting is that they are trustworthy because they are considered an evidence-based practice, which is very important for me as an educator because I only want to use interventions or strategies that have been proven to be effective. Prompting has been effective to address a variety of skills and very important skills such as academic skills, behavioral skills, communication skills, social skills, and vocational outcomes, and even more. Prompting, it maximizes success because we're only teaching correct responses, and it minimizes the negative effects. So we're teaching things in an errorless way, which reduces any type of error that a learner can make. So they're only learning to do something the correct way. And prompting increases generalization of a skill. So for example, if Sally's writing her name, maybe on a worksheet in school, she can generalize this skill across a variety of settings. So maybe she's filling out a paper job application, or maybe we can shape it into her typing her name. But she needs that basic skill first to be able to write her name, which is a skill that could be used throughout her life across a variety of settings. And prompts are important because individuals with autism, they might need to learn skills in a different way. So let's start talking about the different types of prompting. And as you see here, this visual, it's showing you the prompts in a least to most intrusive type of way. So let's start off with the least intrusive, which would be independent. So if somebody is independent at something, that means there's actually no prompting. So this would be here if Sally can write her name by herself. This would be the goal at the end of something if we didn't need any prompts, but this would be, all right, Sally gets her paper, she writes her name on it. She doesn't need any additional prompting. Now let's look at something that's more intrusive, but again, it's still an evidence-based prompt, which is a visual prompt. So a visual prompt is any picture or textual clue that gives information about the correct answer. So for our example here, Sally, she'll write her name, but she might need a flashcard with her name on it, or I could even use a dotted lines for her to trace on top of. So if Sally's not writing her name, with that initial paper in front of her, maybe I start to give her some lines to trace. This could be considered a visual prompt. And I might not even need to write all the letters. Maybe I just write the SA, but this is also something that we talk about can be faded back. Now that we've talked about visual prompting, let's go into verbal prompts. So a verbal prompt is exactly what it sounds like. You're telling either an answer or the part of an answer to a learner. So I could also even repeat the directions more than once. So Sally gets the paper, says name, she doesn't write her name. Well, Sally, write your name. If that doesn't work, maybe I want to be more specific. I want to say write S, write S, A. So this will be an example of a verbal prompt. Again, going back to our prompting hierarchy here, in the middle, let's go to gestural. So a gestural prompt is any type of gesture or action, such as pointing to show the action or task that we want the learner to perform. So for our example here with Sally writing her name, it would just be, all right, let's point to the line where Sally should be writing her name. So that would be an example of a gestural prompt. Looking back at our hierarchy here, we just talked about gestural prompts. So again, we're moving towards the bottom here, which are more intrusive types of prompts. So we're talking about giving the learner more support. So when we talk about modeling, essentially you're modeling the skill. So you're doing the action or task that you want to be imitated. So for Sally here, if her job is to write her name on her paper, she's not doing that. Well, we want to model for her how to do that. So I could do this on her paper, I could do it on a flashcard nearby where she can see it, or I could write it on my board here. So Sally's not writing her name, so I'm going to show her how to do it. I could write her whole name, I could write letters of her name. That depending again on the skill that you're teaching or your learner themselves. So that would be an example of a model prompt. Now we're going to get into some of the most intrusive prompts here, which involve this physical touch. So a partial physical prompt is a gentle touch or a nudge where you point the learner in the right direction. So for our example, Sally here, writing her name. Well, we're not going to write her name for her, but we're going to pick up her hand when she has the pencil in it and move it toward the paper for her to write her name. So we are going to physically guide her hand to the paper with the pencil in it to write her name, or maybe we even guide her hand to the pencil to write her name. So it really depends on the skill being taught. All right, let's go back to our hierarchy here and let's go into the last one here, which is the most intrusive type of prompt, which is the full physical prompt. So a full physical prompt is when you are physically guiding a learner to complete the task. So this involves some hand-over-hand assistance. So the example here would be Sally writing her name. The teacher or myself, I would guide Sally's hand while she has the pencil in it to the paper, and I would use that hand-over-hand assistance for her to write her name. So this picture here shows an example. The student has the pencil in their hand, but the teacher is the one guiding their hand with the pencil for the student to write their name. So you're physically doing the skill for the student, but they're also the one performing the skill. So those were our different types of prompts, and let's just go here to one of our final slides, just some tips for when we talk about prompting. When we talk about prompting, we really want to consider the learner. And when I say consider the learner, well, after they perform something, no matter if it's prompted or not, we want to reinforce that. We want to increase the likelihood that they're going to keep doing something the correct way. So we want to really think about what they could work for that will keep them motivated. And when we talk about skill characteristics too, this might be something where they might not like physical touch. This might be a time where we don't want to use physical prompting with the student, but we could think of other ways to help them obtain a certain skill. And again, generalization is so important. I touched on this in the beginning, but the example that we talked about was writing your name. So writing your name with paper and pencil, that can be used across a variety of settings. Maybe after Sally masters the skill, we could work on her typing her name into different computer programs, because that can also be generalized across a variety of settings for a variety of reasons. And again, when we prompt, we really want to minimize the errors. So for Sally, if she goes to write her name and she starts writing like the letter Q, well, I'm going to see that right away and I'm going to help Sally. I'm going to come in, I'm going to prompt her, and we're going to help her get her name down correctly with the use of prompting. So we don't want her to make these mistakes. We want to show her the right way how to do it, no matter what type of prompt we're using, the right way before or as close to her making error as possible. And again, with any type of skill that we're teaching, we want to see how well the learner learns it and the use of the prompting. So we want to see what prompts are working, and we want to make sure that we fade prompts back. So we're not having the learner become too prompt dependent. So if Sally gets the paper and she's automatically just waiting for me to do some hand-over-hand assistance with her to write her name, well, we need to fade that back so she can become more independent, which is the goal with the use of prompting. We want to use prompting and fade it back where the learner becomes independent. I hope you enjoyed this presentation. Here are my references. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.